Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Hire Moment Mastermind. My name is Sheryl Litzar. Happy to be your host today, joined by my colleague Vern Schellinger. We are happy to hear. We're here to happy to answer your job search questions. So thank you for joining us. So who would like to kick us off with a question? You're always good for questions.
Well, and during my networking, sometimes I come across the hiring manager and I've already applied for the job. I think it's the hiring manager. How would you approach that? Would you say, just generally say you're looking for a job, da 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 da, or would you try to connect even more during the networking?
I'm a little confused. Can you, when you say you meet the hiring manager, can you give us the context of that?
Well, basically, you're aware of the association networking groups.
Right.
And I see a job advertised and I see that this manager is on there and maybe the hiring manager for this job.
Yes.
So how would you approach that?
Oh, I see. But before I answer the question, so have you already applied for the job?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So that's a great question. Well, I wouldn't necessarily say anything on that networking call per se. I would actually do an offline and just what you could do is you could chat the person and say, hi, it's great to meet you on this forum. I noticed that you had a position open for X, which I've recently applied for. Let me know if you're open to connecting about it, something like that, very kind of generic. Now,
okay.
Of course, that person could say, oh, thanks for applying. Our HR person will be in touch, right? But you could simply say, notice your position, just a heads up that I've recently applied for your. Now that's the simplest and safest thing to do, so they don't feel pressure. Just I've recently applied, just letting you, just a heads up. It's the equivalent of using a third party, right? It's the equivalent of having somebody else say that, just a heads up, just right. You're just saying it directly to the person, then they can go ahead and look for your resume.
Yeah. You might say, look forward to, learning more about this opportunity going forward, that type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. This is on one of those monthly chats, association chats.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah. Do you, by the way, Ty, just speaking of the networking group, so are you on, it's actually it's an every day, unless they've changed it.
Well, that's one of them. I'm probably on like 3 or 4. Yeah, the association chat one I'm on like almost every day,
Okay.
8:30 to 9.
Yeah.
And then there's like the business of membership I'm on. Also, I'm on the membership Mondays and the Alexander group.
So the reason why I'm mentioning that, and this, I'm sharing this because of everybody on the call, right? Not just for you, is that when you're in a networking group, especially if it is on a regular basis, how you show up, how you participate, how you engage really matters in terms of how you're perceived. So you want to make sure that you're adding to the discussion, you're contributing ideas, you're asking good questions, you're referring, you're listening to what other people are sharing, and maybe somebody has a need and you're like, oh, I should make a connection to that person. Like, you want to be fully engaged as much as possible. Now, I'm not saying overdo it, right? Don't take over the conversation. But if there's anything thoughtful that you can add to the discussion, do it. Because people will then see, oh, he cares and he's a go-giver and he's thoughtful. And then they start to know you, like you, and trust you. So then when like that hiring manager sees you, oh, wow, Ty said some goes, ooh, he's really interesting. Maybe I really should go and look for his resume. Does that make sense? You're almost like a pre-interview. You're like showing up before the interview. That makes sense?
Yeah. Also, I've thought about, actually, my wife says, well, maybe you should do some research and come across an interesting article and just throw it out there. Because, on the 8:30 to 9, that's all over the board, from social events, what people do in their lives, to professional.
And let me just tag on to what Shira just said. One of the things that we try to, at Context Count, that we try to get people to recognize is exactly what Shira said. We say it a little bit differently. The very first time you're meeting with someone, and this goes both ways, you are looking for some evidence of their character and or their competence.
That's right.
So, and we do the same thing. As soon as we meet somebody, if they're all of a sudden just in our face and yelling and screaming, or boasting or bragging. I mean, we're immediately turned off by that. And the other extreme was what Shara said. Share, engage, come up with ideas, make suggestions, and people, their perception of your character and your competence grows, and that eventually leads to that trust that Shara was talking about.
I need to jump off of what you just said, Vern. You just brought up a really interesting point, and this is one of those live, hot off the press situations, because I'm a recruiter too, right? So this is from that. So this week, I had a phone screen with somebody that I don't think in over 25 years of recruiting, I don't think I've ever had the situation, and I was like blown away. So the individual got on the call, and from the second he got on the call with me, didn't stop talking. Literally did not stop talking. Did not stop talking. I opened the call, and normally, right, in an interview, I'm a recruiter, right? So you're the candidate, and you say, nice to meet you, blah, blah, blah. And then you kind of wait for the recruiter to ask a question or whatever. You just, normal, no. Opened his mouth and started like going for it. Now, this is a sales position. And I know salespeople can be talkers, but this was extreme. And I'm listening, and he's just bragging and bragging, and this, and I do this, and I do this. And then when I tried to get a word in edgewise and said, well, what about this? And just bowled over and was belligerent. And I was just beside myself. In fact, he actually said, so if you want to, when can I meet with the client? I said, we are not there yet. And finally, he said something to me that he was trying to make a suggestion or something of how the client should expand their network. I said, that's not where they're at. And then I was able to finally extricate myself. I said, it sounds like the ideas that you have are probably going to be in conflict with, my client. He goes, well, okay, then, well, I'm going to land anyway, and I'm going to do great. And I was the 4.0. I was like, oh my gosh. So no, I'm sure no one on this call would do that, but I just wanted to let you know that recruiters are listening for who you're being, okay? All the thoughtfulness and being reflective and, engaging, and so we care about that stuff.
And how much research you've done on the job, and what questions do you have
asking
about
good
the job?
questions. Don't just talk about yourself, right? Like, understand what the employer does, be thoughtful, care about them as an organization, care about them as a person, do your homework, do your research. I have a few, by contrast, I have a slate of interviews going on right now, literally today. And all of the candidates, they did their homework on this organization. I was really impressed. I watched the video of the CEO and this and that. I'm like, wow, it's great. Like, they took the initiative, and I'm sure that's going to be very impressive to the client, right? So do your homework, do your research, be thoughtful. It's not just about you. It's about them too. It's about a marriage, right? Like a date, right? Ask good questions about, the person you want to go live with, right? I just really want to encourage reflectiveness, and thoughtfulness in your interviews. So hope that helps. All right. Other questions? Hong, do you have a question? Hong, I'm not sure if are you still there? Yeah. Do you have a question?
Yeah, mute.
No, I don't.
No. Oh, you're just listening to that. Okay. No
Yeah,
worries.
okay.
No worries.
Thank you.
No worries. Zaida. And actually, do you want to share with us a little bit more about your job search? I know in the meeting registration link, you mentioned that you are interested in travel and you wanted to work at NASA headquarters. Can you elaborate a little bit about what you're looking for?
Oh, no, my challenge was to get an opportunity to work for NASA headquarters,
NASA. Yeah.
which I did.
Oh, you're great.
Yes, and I retired too.
Oh, good for you.
Oh,
Yes.
good.
In the meantime, in my free time, I enjoy traveling all over the world, and I'm trying to expand my experience in independent travel and become an independent agent and help other people travel.
Oh, fascinating. So is it your goal to have your goal is to have your own business? Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So are you familiar with the other community service program that I have called Boomer Works?
BoomerWorks, no.
No, okay, so I'm gonna put the Zeta, is it a Zeta or Zeta?
Zeta.
Zeta, okay. I'm gonna put this in the chat, okay? And I'm just gonna take 2 seconds. I know other people on this call have heard me say this. I'll just take just a second here. So it is a different group that I run. It's free, it's volunteer, just like this. And it's for 50
you.
plus, it's designed for 50 plus professionals to
Mhm.
re-career into self-employment, okay? So we offer monthly programs on all kinds of topics, networking, marketing, operations, whatever you need to start your business. And if you just go to boomerworks.org and just go to the join button and hit the join our community, you can just fill out our little form. You'll get it once a month. You'll just get a little promotion just to let you know what's going on. In fact, I happen to be leading the next session. I don't normally lead these things, but I happen to be leading the next session next week, next Thursday, on how to repurpose your W-2 skills into self-employment. So if you're interested, feel free to check us out. Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So do we need to register or what
Yes.
should we do?
Yes, I'll just very quickly pull up the website. And then again, I won't take very long on this. Apologize, because this is meeting is for another purpose. All right, so here's boomerworks.org. So here's the join button. You can hit join our community to fill out our little form, but you could also go to our meetups page, go to upcoming events, and see this is what our upcoming event is. If you go down here, it'll hit register, and it's a meetup link. So you'll go to meetup and you'll register on meetup. And if you want to see our upcoming events, we're booked out through February. So here's all the different topics that we have going on. Okay. And you're welcome anytime.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. So that's about BoomerWorks. Sandra, good to see you. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, Sheriff. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Morning.
So do you have a
Hi,
question?
Sandra.
Hi, good to see you again, hon.
With you.
Thank you.
So do you have a question for us, Sandra?
Yes, thank you. I have two. I'll take one now and give somebody else a chance to ask. I've gotten an invitation to interview, but it's with the video format called Higher View. So I'm curious as who has any recommendations or tips or suggestions on how to, I mean, the details, of course, are in the email, but I'm interested in somebody who's gone through that process or is familiar with it.
So you're talking about doing it's a video interview, so you have to pre-record and send it in.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been hearing about that here and there. It's not, I thought it would become more popular than it is. I don't hear a lot of people doing it. So unfortunately, I don't have experience enough to say anything other than, what I don't like, if they give you the question ahead of time, you may want to prepare your answer.
Mhm.
Okay. And I appreciate that it can be a little bit nerve-wracking when you're just sort of looking into a screen and talking to nobody, talking to crickets. So you may want to just practice it. And I
Mhm.
believe they give you you can do it over and over. Is that right? Like you don't just have to do it on the first take. Is that right?
And it's funny, I just opened the email like 15 minutes ago and I said, wait, go follow up after your 9:15 call.
Yeah, I can share a little bit about this, Sandra, not from a personal standpoint, but my daughter went through one of these, and I think it was with Higher View, and this was a few years ago. And I'm a little surprised, like Shira said, it doesn't seem to have caught on, but if I'm in HR, and you're able to do these interviews and you have this file, then you can send this to other people in the organization. They can watch it whenever they, they can fit it into their schedule easier. So I actually thought it was a good idea, but like Shira said, it hasn't taken off.
Okay, so-
What Jennifer told me, and at least in the one she took, and as Shira said, there's different versions of this. For most of the questions, not all of them, but most of the questions, she could type in an answer and she could go back and edit it and change it if she thought, she had a better idea or she wanted to add something to it. Some of the questions were not that way. And so I'm not sure how much flexibility they'll give you. And I don't know that you'll know that until you actually get into this. And then in the one that she took, and this was for a position in training and development, they actually gave her a case study at the end of the interview where they set out a scenario. I remember her telling me something about a pizza shop and training people how to make pizza. And here's what you have available to you. And so she had to come up with, here's how I'd solve this problem, or here's what I do. So,
Vern, thank you for sharing that.
yeah.
Yeah, so I just Googled it, how to ace how to do well on your video interview with HireVue. Well, sure enough, HireVue has an article on how to ace their interview.
Great.
So I just put that in the chat.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
you're
you.
welcome.
Thank
And
you,
if
Vern.
you, if you Google, sorry, so the search I did, my Google search was tips for interviewing with HireVue. That article came up, but also others. In fact, there's a YouTube videos. Here,
That was the
HireVue
next thing.
HireVue video interview, 5 mistakes you need to avoid.
Perfect.
There's a bunch of them. So
Yeah.
that should help.
And
Thank you.
Sandra, make sure you let us know next week, how did it go?
Mhm.
I will. Yes,
Yeah.
it was sent at like 5:15 this morning. So yeah, somebody on the early shift, I guess, gave me the good news. I was selected for this
Early
video.
shift, or it's one of those automated things,
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I'll let you know how this works out.
Yeah. Well, because other people may, your experience may be, sharing it with others may be helpful to others if they're ever faced with it. So,
Thank you again.
And
Yep.
by the way, sorry, I'm going to pivot for a second.
It's okay.
So I've given a couple tips today about my own recruiting experience. So I want to give you another one, again, a recent thing. So, as recruiters, we know that a person's resume does not necessarily reflect their candidacy, and it can go both ways. A less than pleasant looking resume still could mean that the person is fabulous, and a fantastic resume could mean that the person doesn't necessarily line up with the fabulousness of their form. So I had that experience this past week where there was a candidate whose resume is, shall we say, not so great, like really not so great. But I took a chance and I met this person. I was absolutely blown away, blown out of the water by the fabulousness of this candidate. I did not know what to do with myself. I called my client. I said, this person's amazing, right? And I said, so I said to the candidate, I said, your resume does not match up with how amazing you are. I said, we really need to redo it. Now, the fact is that she didn't have a lot of time because the interview got scheduled very quickly. And so we just she gave me a slightly different version and we tweaked it a little bit. And I'm just, I know that when the client meets her, she'll see, right? The person's amazing. But my point though, is that you want your resume to line up with how strong you are as a candidate. It can be, because I happen to be one of those people where I sort of overlooked it. The resume was like not great at all. And when I say not great, I mean, in fact, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to hide the person's name, but I am going to show this to you so you can see what I'm talking about. Sorry, this is going to take a second because I was not prepared to do this. Give me one moment.
and one of the things when Shira's talking about when a resume is not so great, if I'm reading a resume and it says responsible for the following and it just talks about factual information without any kind of results or outcomes, it doesn't really tell me anything about the person.
Right.
If somebody, Sandra, you can relate to this. If you're the director of HR and the first bullet point underneath director of HR says responsible for hiring staffing, I'm saying you're the director of HR. Isn't it obvious that you're responsible for hiring and staffing? I mean, to me, it says, I didn't put a lot of thought into this. And how could I change that bullet point to demonstrate how good I am at hiring and staffing, as opposed to I'm responsible for hiring and staffing.
So I'm going to show this to you right now. This individual is an
Thank you, Vern.
executive assistant.
Yeah.
And of course, I'm hiding their name. Okay. But I want you to see this. On the one hand, you would think, oh, you're about to see a pretty looking document. I want you to see why, as a recruiter, I was just like, so first of all, the person is an executive assistant. Okay. I know they're an executive assistant because we talked about this. This is what they do, but she started out with office and business operations leader. Okay. All these things that have nothing to do really with being an executive assistant. Put in her World War II global studies, nothing to do with any of this. But more importantly, in her experience section, do you see how this is not fleshed out at all? There's no accomplishments. There's barely even any job duties.
Yeah.
talks about what the organization does here. And do you see how just there's no substance, and everything is just these short little phrases. I mean, it's not at all what as a recruiter, I would be looking for. I'm looking for accomplishment stories. I'm looking for people to talk about what they have done. And this is just sort of all over the place. Okay. So I just want to show you, even though this is like a pretty format, somebody who wrote this in a way that did not tell me really what they do in a way that was compelling. But again, I overlooked it, and I'm so glad I did. Okay. But I just want you to see an example of what you shouldn't do. Okay. Just, you really want to make sure that they're thoughtful. And I'll just bring up my own resume template again. I haven't done this. I'm not sure. I don't think in a while. Actually, you know what? I think sorry, you know what? I just overwrote it. Okay. Sorry. All right, you know what? I can't do it. I apologize. Yesterday, unfortunately, I just overwrote my own resume template, so I can't do that one. Let me try one more for you, and then we'll move on to another topic.
While Shira's searching, just for everyone's information, I have a hard stop at 10, so I will be leaving the call a little bit early today. And this is an example of,
Here.
You may have heard me talk before about dormant relationships, people that you haven't been in touch with for a long time. So I have a call with somebody I worked with 20 years ago. And we've maybe touched base 3 or 4 times over the last 20 years, but I haven't talked to him in quite some time. So
Hopefully it's fruitful, right?
yeah, well,
Never know, right?
well, this is another way to use those types of relationships. I have I'm working on a project. He's got expertise in the area that I'm working on a project. So I'm reaching out to him and say, George, tell me what you know about this. And of course, we're going to catch up on a whole bunch of other things. So at the same time. So
I did find another sample for you. So here we go. This is what I'm talking about. Okay. So where you have a thoughtfully crafted resume where you have actual accomplishment stories and they are labeled with various competencies. Okay. Now they don't quite have to be this long, but you can write them this long if you have a label. If you didn't have a label, here's what it would look like. Okay. It would just be blah, 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 right? If all you had were these long bullets, the recruiter is going to go, blah. They're literally not going to be able to read anything. But when you have the labels, the competency labels, then it actually helps the reader scan down, see the competency labels. Then if they want to read more, they can. It's kind of like a website, like an icon. You click on the drop down and then you can read more. It helps with the visuals. Okay. So I just want to give you an example of what it could look like if you write a solid accomplishment story. And again, it doesn't have to be that long. You know, it could be shorter than this. It could be, that long. That's fine. But as long as labeled and it's customized to the job. Like what you see here is a generic resume. It was written generically. The person could send it out to their network. But once the person looks at a job description, you have to look down and see what are the competencies that the employer is looking for, what are the competencies you listed, and you mix and match. And you make sure that where appropriate, you align what they want with what you have. Okay, so that's just a quick tip for you. All right, Ty?
I was just curious on the first person you talked about, that their resume was not that good, but somehow they got the interview. Was there something that jumped out, or how does this person, if their resume is not that good, how do they get to that point?
That's a really good question. In this particular case, I was just being open-minded, frankly. I wanted to kind of see a bunch of candidates, and I thought, well, I looked at where they worked and generally what the titles were. I'm like, you know what? Why not? I really just took a chance. That's really what it was. I decided not to screen them out based upon what I saw. I just said, generally speaking, this was fairly decent. And the other thing too is I happened not to get a ton of responses for this role. Had I had 200 resumes, this person may not have been screened in, frankly. Right? I might have gone with the folks who seemed more on target. In this case, I was trying to expand my pool. So I was more inclusive rather than exclusive. That was that particular search. I was able to do that.
Mm. So
really just depends on the status of recruiter. In fact, Sandra, you've been in talent acquisition for a long time. You want to chime in here? I should probably rely on you more here because you've been in this seat because you're as much of an expert.
Thank you, Shira. Pretty much what you were saying, right? When you pulled up their resume on LinkedIn, it would not be one that I would typically reach out to, you know, yeah, because of the phrases, because of the employment history. But you're right. Sometimes if the hiring team is like, oh my, where are the resumes? Where are the resumes? And it's been day 3 and I don't have more than a couple, then I'm going to have to go back and say, well, let me take a second look at those 20
That's
and
right.
then have that call. And if the person can send over something more presentable within a few hours or by the end of the business day, then it's like, okay, maybe I can send that to the hiring team and just
Now,
preface it.
in this particular case, it's so interesting because Sandra has done recruiting internally, right? And oftentimes she was what's called a corporate recruiter. So when a person is a corporate recruiter, oftentimes the hiring managers insist on reviewing the resumes before they interview the candidates. That's just often the way that they do it. Now, I'm a third party. I'm a headhunter, okay? And I happen to have, I'm able to usually have a relationship with my clients where they don't need to screen the resume before they send. It's just the nature of the game. It had nothing to do with Sandra's recruiting ability or my recruiting ability, nothing to do with that. It's literally just the way that it works. And so in this particular case, I was able to, and yes, she did give me a slightly different version. It's not gorgeous, but it's better, okay, than what you just saw. And I was able to set up the interview sight unseen, just like, trust me, hiring manager, she's going to be great. And then they'll see the resume. But the point is that you can't know if it's my kind of relationship or Sandra's kind of relationship. If I was in Sandra's shoes, I'd have to do exactly what she did, like make sure that the resume is presentable and so that the hiring manager could screen. And so I say that, I mention that because it is so important to spend time on your resume. Make sure that it is concise, make sure that it is thoughtful, make sure that it's customized to the role, that it's formatted well, that there's no typos, that it looks pretty. All those things make a difference because Sandra could have done the first level screen, love the person, but if the hiring manager only has the piece of paper to go with, that's how they're going to make their decision, right? So it's really important. Sandra, anything else you want to share about that?
No.
I'll share another aspect of this, which is it's more from the job seeker's standpoint. We've said this over and over again, how sometimes you apply for a job and then you don't hear and you wonder what's going on, and you're in like no man's land. And Sandra, maybe you've had this situation, but I've screened resumes and given 10 resumes here, 10 of the best resumes that we've got, given it to the hiring manager. Hiring manager says we got to fill this position really quickly. And then like a week later, I haven't heard back from the hiring manager. And then 2 weeks later, I haven't heard back from the hiring manager. And I'm going, you said you needed this position. Yeah, but I'm busy. Well,
busy. Yeah, but I'm busy. That's right.
Yeah, but I'm busy. And so the whole recruiting process gets slowed down.
That's right.
And the other thing I would say is I'm saying, hey, some of these people look really good. This is not the only job they probably applied for.
That's right.
What could happen is you're going to say, oh, wow, I really want to talk to this person.
And
they're gone.
Yeah.
So, just to, again, as the job seeker, it just frustrates the heck out of you that it's gone into radio silence here, but that's what happens sometimes.
Exactly. I was sharing with a friend who does sales, the same scenario, actually early this morning. I said the same thing happens. You get these great candidates and you send them over and then they're saying, well, now I have to wait to talk to the client. And it's going to be 3 days before you hear anything from the hiring manager. Meanwhile, you talk to the candidate, you think they're a great fit. And you're concerned they're gonna go to another company because you have nothing to give them for 3 days and maybe longer. And yes, it's very frustrating. It can be very frustrating.
Mhm. Yeah, it's very complex. That's why we share these stories with you. There's no one size fits all. There's no one normal scenario. Every company is different, but just so you understand, when you're frustrated on their side, sometimes they can be too. It's just, yeah, everybody's dealing with how to navigate, all this. Tabi, and then we'll go back to Ty.
So my particular question was about resumes itself. So would you recommend like if someone has like a difficult like time writing or things like that, would you recommend like maybe looking into like a resume writer or someone to sit
Absolutely.
down, for the
Ab-
person to sit down with and say, look, this is what I've done. I just have trouble
Absolutely.
like presenting myself in a professional.
Absolutely. It's, I mean, just to be clear, it's why people like me exist. I actually am a resume writer. And I'm only saying that because I have a lot of people who come to me who are fabulous. They're like, I just can't string together the right kinds of phrases. I just need an external writer to help me do that. So
Or
people
maybe
like-
not as eloquent, like in expressing
yeah,
words. or something.
writing resumes is different than writing any other kind of document. It's not like writing an email. It's not like writing a paper. It's got its own kind of phraseology. And so, and it's not about me, but there are a lot of resume writers out there at Tabi. I really would recommend that you think about that, because resume writers write in a certain way and can write to what the recruiter is looking for. So, you could check out all kinds of people. You can go on LinkedIn and just type in resume writer in the search bar if you want to find all kinds of people to look for. We all do it a little differently. We all charge different rates. I mean, go and do your research on who you want to work with, but I absolutely would recommend that you think about that. Yeah, it can be very, very helpful, because then you're putting your best foot forward. It's like going to the hairdresser or something, like the hairstylist, right? Most people don't cut their own hair. because you need an expert.
Will a recruiter hold it against you, like if someone else wrote it, or like
First of all, they're not going to know. First of all, they're not going to
Mhm.
know. And even if they did, it doesn't matter. No, not at all. If anything, it'll show your thoughtfulness that you took the time to have a professional help you. It's fine. Absolutely fine. This is the most normal thing in the world. They themselves might go to a resume writer. I mean, that's just why resume writers exist. It's fine. Totally fine. Yep. Very normal. Ty?
I had an instance where I interviewed with a person and didn't hear anything. So I went back to him and wrote him an email, didn't hear anything. So then finally I said, I'll give it one more shot. I know I should be chasing after them. And then finally they got back to me and they said, well, we opened our search. We didn't receive enough resumes. So I'm assuming just let it go. Like if I was the candidate, they would have moved me ahead.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But I'm surprised they even admitted they didn't receive enough resumes.
Well,
Well-
sure said, everybody does it a little bit different.
It's true.
Everybody.
It's
Yeah.
true. People
Yeah.
get all kinds of things in their head. I'll just give you another example of not about resumes, but how employers are so different. So, you know how we, in the last couple of years, of course, we've all of a sudden seen a lot of remote jobs. Okay. That has become very, very commonplace. There are still some employers that are insisting on people working in the office, at least on a hybrid level. Well, pre-pandemic, no big deal. Hey, if anything, candidates were happy. Oh, great, I get to telework. Remember, we used to use that term. We don't say that anymore. We say remote now. I get to telework. Oh, that's great. Now it's the other way around. Most candidates are expecting to work remotely, insist actually on working remotely, and will only take a job if it's remote. And now that you can take a job anywhere in the country, it's a candidate's market. Okay, you have your choice. Well, there are some employers that are still insisting on this and don't know what's changed in the market. And I was talking to one of them the other day, and I was talking to an executive, and she was telling about her CEO, and he's one of those people who's like, nope, got to be in the office. And of course, his candidate pool is really, really small because most people just don't want it. In fact, he lost 2 candidates where they got to offer stage, and the candidates pulled back out and said, nah, I decided I want remote. Okay. And I said, and so because of that, he's losing out on fantastic people who otherwise have opportunities all around the country to work remotely. So understand that this is a moving target for both sides. You've got your needs, they've got their needs. Everybody's got to start shifting their mindset a little bit to come to find each other because times changed, things are changing. Tabby?
So from your perspective, why do you think like most employers like prefer, you said most prefer remote, right? So from what you're hearing, is there a rationale or like thought process about why they prefer remote?
Well, let me reframe this a little bit. Most candidates, most job seekers are preferring remote work.
So
Okay.
it's not the CEO.
So
right?
I'm gonna be clear, more clear. So thank you for asking the question. So let me try to be super clear about this. So first of all, the phenomenon here is that most job seekers are looking for remote work, number one, okay? Meaning that for those employers that are still insisting on having people come in to the office, the employer is missing out on a whole lot of candidates because a whole lot of candidates are insisting on remote work, okay? So that's the first concept. The second thing is that, yes, there are more and more employers that are open to remote work because they themselves have downsized. Like they've recognized over the last 2 years that their staff has worked perfectly fine remotely. There are people who have all over the country who've completely given up their office space, completely. The poor commercial real estate market, that's a whole other story. But build office, there are empty office buildings all over the country now because people have just pulled out and they've gone completely remote, or maybe they have a little bit of a footprint or they're downsizing. So they've recognized they don't need to have people in the office. And so they're open. And now they've also realized that a lot of candidates are expecting this. So they've just changed their mindset. So I'm going to make up a number. There's no statistic behind this. This is just anecdotal from Shira. Okay. My estimation is that probably up to 80% of jobs now are fully remote. Again, my statistic. Could it be less than that? Yes, but that's what I'm kind of feeling, that only about 20% are requiring people to come in the office, do hybrid. Now, mind you, that's not for every job. No, there's some jobs. Look, I mean, I just went to the hairdresser the other day, okay? You notice my hair's a little shorter, that's why. I went to the hairdresser. Well, you can't hire a remote worker for a hair salon. Of course not, right? You can't. Tabi, I know that you like to do concierge kind of work in a building. You know, if a commercial real estate company needs to have a staff on site, you can't do that. You can't be at a front desk remotely. A dentist's office, a doctor's office, a hotel, right? Things that are what we call brick and mortar. There are some kinds of jobs that are on site. So what I'm talking about are for people whose jobs are not required to be on site, right? Like a traditional office kind of person. If the job can be done digitally, like just doing through the computer, then a lot of companies are allowing people to work fully remotely. But for those jobs that need to be on site, then yes, obviously they have to still be on site. And in fact, those employers are struggling because they can't find people to come in on site. Really, 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 really tough market for those employers, drivers and construction, and all kinds of workers that need to be physically in an office or for on site or whatever. Really hard for them to find good people right now. So that's a whole other story. Tabi, does that help? Okay. All right, other questions?
Yeah, I have another question. What does it say if you open up somebody's LinkedIn profile and they have a website, they built their own website? I say this because I network with some of the association world, and she said like, oh, some of my interns have websites. They built their own websites as marketing. What does that say? Anything at all?
I mean, sure. It's a little bit of the road less traveled. Depends on who the person is. It can show a level of savviness, a little digital savviness. It's kind of it. Look, for people who are in the creative world, like a graphic designer, a web designer, any of those people, that's actually very, very helpful, right? Because then they can show their portfolio of their work. That I actually would expect them to do something like that. For other kinds of people, if you have one, that's nice. I wouldn't necessarily say that it takes you into this whole other realm of you qualifications necessarily. It's kind of like sprinkles on the ice cream, but I don't know. Sandra, do you have another feeling, or Vern? I don't think that it's that, extra impressive. But it's
Yeah,
nice.
I mean, obviously there's skills needed to create a website and so forth and so on. But if you're applying for jobs that don't need those skills, then,
It's
it's
not-
nice, it's nice that you,
Nice.
built the website, but it's not necessarily going to get you the
No,
job.
No,
So
maybe show that you're a little more tech savvy, but
Yeah,
it
I agree.
might also be with the younger generation. I mean, Instagram, TikTok, any way I can get my message out there and
Yeah,
brand
yeah, yeah.
myself.
Could be.
This is just one more way to do it.
Mhm.
right. And it might be in the future that people expect that. I don't know,
Yeah.
but right now it's nice, but I
Mhm.
wouldn't necessarily take the time to do it.
Well, I guess the reason
I
why,
would focus on your resume more than I'd focus on a website.
I agree.
okay. Well, the reason why I ask is through my networking, some people have told me in order to get an advantage or show you're up to speed as an older person is you got to show you that you're tech savvy.
I think you have to show that you're open. My experience is you have to show that you're open to learning, and you have to be competent. You have to have a certain level of proficiency with the Microsoft suite. I think, like Sharon Vern said, doing the website and all that. Yes, if you're a coder or if you are a web developer, I expect to see that. If I don't see that, then I'm highly concerned. But for customer service, a relationship manager, or HR, if I had my own HR business, then yeah, it'd be nice if I could do that. But I'm not the 1099. So I think, but it is crucial, Ty, that yes, people in our age group, we do have to be aware. And if we can show that, I think there are other ways to show it. I hope there are, but
Here's one way. Here's another way you can show it. It's interesting because a candidate this week told me about what she's done. This candidate has gone after certificates, like those little badges. This little class and that little class, certified in Excel, certified in project, and all these different things. And you can add that to your resume, and you can add that to your LinkedIn profile. Those are easy peasy. You can go to LinkedIn Learning. LinkedIn has it. There's all kinds of places to do it. And you just get little certificates, little badges. And it can really bolster your candidacy, especially if you want to learn tech skills. It can show that you're kind of keeping up with the times.
thank you, Shara.
All right, I've got to sign off for today, everybody. See you next
Vern.
week.
Good to see
All right,
you. Bye.
bye-bye.
Right.
One thing I just wanted to share when we were talking a moment ago about the remote versus hybrid. So what I'm experiencing, and again, I think it's role dependent. So for example, when I'm looking for talent acquisition specialists, recruiting, then I do see a lot of remote. I do see hybrid. I don't see as much of the in-office required. But then when I'm talking with recruiters about manager or HR director, then, for example, this week, 2 of the roles that I was talking with recruiters for, they want you on site. Now, one is in a manufacturing industry, so that makes sense, but the other is not. And so I was like, oh, okay, but that's their reality. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. So you have to make a decision for yourself as to whether you can meet their business requirements. It's not unrealistic for them to ask it. It's just that they're going to have a more limited pool because that's the requirement.
Right. And then I had to just think about that. It's like, well, that's their organization. I can say no, thank you, but they're not going to change because of what
That's right.
my thoughts are.
That's right. And in their case, they really can't, right? Because they need that. But there are some more employers who can't. And then so people like me, and I'm sure Sandra, preach to them and say, you should probably open your mind. If they don't have to be on site, why are you insisting it? And people do have their reasons, normally it's a cultural reason. They want people together. They want people to brainstorm together. And there's nothing like the water cooler chat. And it's true. I mean, look, there's nothing like being in person. If we were all right here in a room together, we'd probably have a very different dynamic than being on Zoom. It's just the way that it is. And yet the world has changed. So
Yeah.
employers have to adapt when they can.
Mhm.
All right. Other thoughts, questions, ideas?
I was glad that Vern shared that he was going to have this meeting with somebody he hadn't spoken to in 20 years, because that's one of my areas that I need to really improve upon as a networking. And just last night, it's like, well, I know it's been 17 years, but you can reach out to that person. So I'll do that, Vern.
You should.
Yeah.
You absolutely should. You never know. Like Verna's told us on this call, share this on this call. That's how he and I reconnected. We hadn't
Wow.
seen each other. Yeah, we hadn't seen each other in, I don't know, it was 10 years, whatever, a long time. We used to be part of an HR networking group and just fell out of touch, whatever. And then somebody on this call, back in the beginning when I first, we
Wow.
first started this in 2020, she knew Vern and she was actually coaching with Vern. And she goes, Vern, I'm on this, nice, call, job seeker call and run by Sheryl. Oh, Sheryl, like that's what Vern said. Oh, and so she like put us back in touch and he calls me one day and he's like, how's it going? And I'm like, Vern, I said, you should be on our call as an expert. And that's how he came back on. So you just don't know.
Now, would you recommend I'm reaching out via LinkedIn first if somebody hadn't spoken to in 17 years, we used to work together, or if I have the phone number, just chance it and see what happens?
I would, yeah, because the thing with, you can do LinkedIn, but you don't know if they're going to check it. A lot of people just don't check LinkedIn like ever, So I wouldn't, I would just give them a call, random reach out, voicemail, follow up with a text and see what happens. They'll probably say, oh, blast for the past. That's great. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So the rule of thumb is as long as you left things on good terms. If the last encounter you had with them was warm, they should remember you warmly and they should be delighted to hear from you.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure, Michael Gutierrez said hello too.
Oh, yeah. So Michael actually, so it's funny. So Michael is my Vern for BoomerWorks. So how Vern is on this call every week, Michael is on my call every month for my BoomerWorks. He hosts our meetings. So he's my sidekick. So yeah, his name is Michael Butera, just great guy.
Really nice person.
Sweetheart. Yep. It's great. All right.
But I've seen him on the VivaWorks call. Right.
Yeah, he's great. He's really great. Any other questions? All right, we can end a little early then today. Okay, so as per usual, we'll end the call now. And if you'd like to stay on for a quick prayer call, I'm happy to do that with you all. Otherwise, we will see everybody else next week. All right, have a blessed day, everybody.